Red and blue lights washed across my driveway, and that old oak looked like it was breathing. Pamela Kent stood there, in a navy blazer, with bolt cutters hanging from her wrist like a trophy. And she pointed at me and told the deputy. He threatened me. He cut our lock, and I stood 10 feet back, with my hands open. Body cam, blinking the water meter, hissing where a shiny city seal used to be, and the deputy looked from the cut metal to Pamela, to me, and said, "Sir, do you want to press charges for utility tampering and filing a false report?" And in that moment, I realized peace sometimes shows up wearing a badge and asking you to make a choice. My name's Ethan Cole, and I bought the corner lot at Maple Ridge Crossing because I wanted quiet, just enough yard for a cedar fence and a little shed and a grill that smells like Sunday Edmond, Oklahoma. Quiet. The kind where the creek out back whispers after a storm, and the oak shades the porch just right. My late wife Jen used to say, "That tree minded its business better than most people," and most days I agree. But at 6:03 a.m. on a Tuesday, I learned what a clipboard can do. The knock sounded like a warrant. I opened the door barefoot, holding a coffee filter, and there she was, taking pictures of my fence before she said hello. "Mr. Cole, I'm Pamela Kent, president of Maple Ridge Crossing HOA. You're in violation of Standards 5.17.390. She clicked her pen like a starter pistol, Bent's color. "Not earth. Tone approved, grass over 2 inches. That structure looks unpermitted." She slid me a pink slip for $500. In 72 hours, I looked at the oven clock that still said 6:03 and said, "You do house calls this early?" And she smiled. The kind of smile that never reaches the eyes, and said, "Early birds set standards." Then she took another picture of my fence like it was a suspect and walked off. I stood there with a fine in one hand and a coffee filter in the other, and tried not to feel like a kid who didn't study for a test. Nobody told him he was taking. You know what I mean. I brewed the coffee, photographed everything with timestamps, because if this went sideways, I didn't want it to be my word against a blazer. Then I pulled my closing packet and spread it out on the kitchen table. Title commitment. Schedule B. All the words you only read when you have to. And there it was. Annexation Instrument Phase 3. Not of record, I stared at the county plat. Phase 1 and 2 had book and page numbers, like good citizens. Phase 3, where my lot sits, had a stamp and a blank, where the annexation should live. If you aren't recorded into the HOA, you aren't in the HOA, simple as ink. But my stomach still flipped. So I emailed the property manager, attached the deed. The plat, the highlight. "Please provide the recorded annexation that binds lot." 314 kept it polite because my mother would hear my tone. "Wherever she is," Pamela answered first. "Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and possible lien." She CC'd the board and the neighborhood list. Like I was a lesson plan. And by noon Saturday, an orange final notice was zip-tied to my fence for 1,500 subject line. On the neighborhood email read, "Non-compliant resident. Endangering property values." Cropped photos of my fence made the cedar stain look like a crime. Replies came quick rules. Rules, we all agreed. And then a knock from a quiet neighbor named Nora Patel, who handed me a manila folder. She whispered, "She fined us $100 for sidewalk chalk. I kept everything." And I swear, you can feel your spine grow back when you realize you're not the only one being pushed. I hired a surveyor. Caleb Morton, PLS stitched on his cap. He walked the perimeter, found the iron pins, flagged them neon. Your rear line sits on a public drainage easement. HOA common area. 2 different animals, he said, and he signed an exhibit that felt heavier than paper that afternoon. Pamela slid a little silver lock onto my water meter and slapped a sticker over it that read, "Managed by Maple Ridge." Fast hands. Magician and hands. I walked down with my phone out and asked Pamela, "Is that your property?" And she said, "This community has standards. Water shutoff for non-compliant residents is authorized under Section 11. Section 11 of what? And recorded where, I asked, and she gave me that smile again and left. Sticker looked official until you looked twice, so I called Edmond City Utilities and told the man on the line. A private citizen had locked a city meter. He stopped me halfway, "Sure. Touching our equipment is a no-go. We'll send someone." Then, he added, "If anyone calls 911 and says you messed with it, keep your hands visible and your voice calm." These scenes can get weird. And I sat on my tailgate feeling grateful and mad at the same time. Yeah, that happened. I took Nora's folder to an attorney, Monica Rhodes, who has bulldog energy and pearls. She flipped through the fines and my title packet and said if Phase 3 was never annexed by recorded instrument, they don't have jurisdiction over your lot. If she threatened a lien, that's a problem. If she touched a city lock, that's a charge. I'll draft a cease and desist and a records request. You document everything. Breathe and don't yell. They feed off that, and I walked out lighter. The HOA meeting was bad. Fluorescent lights and folding chairs and cookies and nobody ate. Pamela banged a gavel and said, "Dame, Cole." Last chance to comply. I stood and made my legs behave and said, "Show me the recorded annexation for Phase 3. And read this into the minutes. I handed the secretary the cease and desist, and a county recorder search board member, Gavin Pierce, avoided my eyes. Pamela asked a volunteer to remove me, and the volunteer looked at the paper. Then at me, then back at Pamela, like he had baseball practice. I set a portable scanner on the table and slid over the email from City Utilities, confirming the meter and the lock were municipal property, and said, "If anyone cuts that seal, it won't be me." Pamela called it misinformation and moved to mailbox paint colors, and 3 different neighbors whispered, "Thank you." As I left, small things, big meaning. Sveki. Next morning, a white SUV parked half on my curb. Pamela stepped out with 2 board members and a contractor, whose face said he'd rather be anywhere. "We are here to correct violations," she announced. I pointed at the neon stake and said, "That's my side," and tapped my body. "Cam, I'm recording." She stared at the lens, stepped over the line, grabbed the bolt cutters herself, and bit down on that lock. It popped with a sound I still hear. Then she dialed, and her voice shifted from sharp to calm. Like a trick 911. "I need officers. There's an aggressive male threatening me with a weapon. I didn't have a weapon. I had my hands open and my body cam." Blinking, 2 neighbors lifted their phones. The air went heavy, like right before lightning. Deputy Sean Harper arrived and moved like a man who doesn't let other people write his report. He asked for IDs. I gave him my license, my deed. Copy the highlighted plat. The email from the city. He looked, he listened, and he radioed a utilities inspector. "Miss Kent," he said gently, but firm, "this equipment belongs to the city of Edmond." And Pamela tried. "Our standards require enforcement." But he didn't blink. "Your standards don't trump municipal property. Inspector Dana Ortiz pulled up in a city truck and knelt like she was diffusing something precious. "This is our lock, and it's been cut," she said, and wrote on a white form with 3 carbons, a fact older than all of us. And for the first time, Pamela's face reached for a plan and didn't find one. They called an emergency meeting at the park pavilion that evening. Sunlight and lawn chairs and phones up, the deputy stood near the rail. Dana had the cut seal in a bag. Caleb set a laminated survey on an easel with kindergarten colors, and I held a small stack of paper and the mic that felt heavier than it looked. Pamela tried the speech. "This resident is destroying our community standards." And I said, "I moved here for the same reasons you did. I cut my grass. I pay my bills. But you don't get to make rules up after the fact and call it authority." Then I laid it out at Exhibit 1. County Recorder Search. No annexation instrument recorded for Phase 3. If it isn't recorded, it isn't binding. Phones squat the stamp. Exhibit 2 Licensed Survey. Neon flags prove the back line is a public drainage easement. HOA Common Area. Caleb gave a small nod. Exhibit 3 City Email. Meter and lock are municipal property. Dana lifted the bagged seal. Exhibit 4. My body cam. Pamela stepped onto my side. Cut the city lock, then called 911. About a weapon that didn't exist, the pavilion went quiet. The way rooms go quiet. When truth rides in wearing work boots, Gavin leaned to his mic and thought it was off. "We never recorded Phase 3, he muttered. 50 people inhaled at once. Nora raised her folder. 42 bogus fines. I kept them all, and the deputy stepped forward just enough. Based on what I've seen, and the city inspection, there's probable cause for utility tampering and a false report." And then he turned to me. "Mr. Cole, do you want to pursue charges?" I looked at the oak and the creek and the faces of people who had been made small, and heard my voice come out steady. "Yes." Pamela shook her head, like she could undo the day with motion. "You can't do this. I am the HOA." And Gavin cleared his throat and found a backbone. Motion to remove Pamela. Kent as president, effective immediately. Hands went up like a tide. I and the deputy spoke softly behind her, and I didn't hear the words. I heard the cuffs click, not loud. Just final. The orange notice on the pavilion post lost its zip tie and skittered across the concrete. Like a cheap flag, nobody cheered. Storms don't care if you clap when they end. People will argue, should I have asked for an apology and a resignation and called it even? Maybe, maybe not. But if you've ever been a soft target for someone who loves the sound of their own authority, you know. It doesn't stop because you're polite. It stops when the paper is real and the line is bright, and someone with a badge says enough. I didn't want to be the guy who makes trouble. I wanted to be the guy who waters his lawn and minds his grill. But peace sometimes asks you to draw a border and hold it with both hands. You know what I mean. Tell me what you think. Was I right to press charges, or did I go too far? Where's the line between community standards and petty control? Have you seen someone use a little power to make people small? Drop your story in the comments. Push back. If you disagree, tell me where I got it wrong, or where it felt true. Hit like if you want more real stories and more quiet wins. Subscribe if you think neighbors shouldn't have to shout to be heard, and if you're dealing with a clipboard right now. Check your papers. Book and page recorded instrument, real authority lives in ink, not in a speech.